continue sharing. That's the wrong thing because it's in the it's on the screen now. Thank you for okay. WebEx is has now become confused. Let me try this one more time. Stop the presentation mode, and then I might redact this part. And then share the screen, and then restart presenting. Okay, everybody good? Can we see this?
Yes.
Yeah,
Great.
that looks good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're recording. Also wanted to mention the W3c policies that are in effect here or under the Community Contributor License Agreement. If you have not agreed to this, please do not make substantive contributions to the specs at least. This meeting operates under the Code of Ethics. Be nice to people, please. Thank you, Chris, for starting to scribe. Anything you want to say about that? Asking for help, anything. I think you've done a wonderful job on the times you've done it so far. Really appreciate it.
No, I'm happy to help. Just occasionally, if you're referring to things, if you can help just by pasting links into the IRC, then that's helpful.
Okay, I will try to do that. The slides I will also post. They have some of these links as well. So the agenda is I was just anyone wants to add something, now's the time, or change something. I was going to take 15 minutes to walk through sort of where we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then just go into our a review of what I think the next steps are for this work, and possibly, if anybody's available, schedule some working sessions for the upcoming month where we hope to do some things, and then do a wrap up, recap any action items we have. Did anybody want to throw anything else in that mix? If not, then I will go ahead. Great. So this is the Multicast community group. Our mission is to enable multicast IP transport to efficiently solve scalability problems in networking web operations. So it's really about adding a capability to browsers to receive multicast in some form. There's no sending. There's not any outbound traffic that the web page is able to use. We're not even totally settled on whether there will be any visible API that the web page would call, though I think there probably should be something. The demo we have running does have an API, but it's not clear that it's strictly necessary as compared to something that can fit inside web transport. But the main goal is to just, there probably will be some form of API that would be exposed to the web page to enable this or to make use of it. And the idea is to just try to leverage that multicast transport that's out there and not yet being properly leveraged. The reason we want to do that is really about, there's two main things. I'll go over a couple of them. And a couple other lesser ones, but this is one of the first big ones, is user experience. This is traffic that we got from a regular day at one of the ISPs. This is just every half hour there's a histogram of how much of what the achieved rate of traffic was averaged over all the requests into that ISP, the responses into that ISP that were above 100 kilobytes. And you can see that during the peak time of day, it sort of gets a little bit worse. You've got like some increases in the sort of low end of the bucket of rates that are achieved, and then some corresponding decreases in things that exceeded 50 megabits per second. So this is kind of normal and not totally unreasonable, but on a heavy traffic day, then it gets really kind of bad. This is like 9 hours long. The way I think of this is about like half the good put for about 9 hours. And this was a day when there were like some big video game downloads that had been released, um, and there might have been I can't remember what else. It might even have been a Patch Tuesday or some such, which also has some of these kinds of effects. These things are addressable with multicast, and it doesn't have to be that it's hammering the entire network. A lot of networks see this kind of thing. Sometimes it's less visible than others. It's not always just from our traffic. Sometimes it's from other people's traffic. Ours meaning I'm with Akamai. But we do get complaints from networks about this kind of thing, and the reason we're getting complaints from networks is because their users are seeing this kind of like much worse than usual network performance. And they're calling them up saying, "What's the problem here?" And the and the networks are kind of stuck in a difficult place because there's so much traffic hitting them. The key problem that multicast solves that we can't solve any other way is congestion on these on the access networks into the homes. So these are typically oversubscribed somewhat. And you can put caches very deep into networks, but you can't put them inside here. There's no IP addressability on like these cable networks. In the slides, it's not just cable networks. It's also fiber has a similar kind of thing, and different kinds of access types. 5G, also you can leverage these kinds of things. 4G, it's a little bit trickier, but there's some ways. I put in a list of sort of, I think I told it to skip this one, but if you go back and look at the slides, you can see a rough estimate of kind of how much offload at different points of an access network for different kinds of access topology is achievable. But basically, when you've got like 3,000 customers on a cable loop, and they're 30% of them are watching some sporting event that's the popular event of the day, or 20% of them have a play Call of Duty, and it's getting, that download is getting updated that day, then many of them are getting traffic that could be shared, right? It's not shared today, but it could be shared if you did it right. And if you tried to do it from this cache, you'd still have the same problem because all that traffic would have to be sent one-to-one to each individual end user. But by doing it through multicast, we've got proof of concepts that do this, that are running. Then when these people try to get the traffic, then it's possible to share much of it. It's not always possible to share all of it. There are many things that cannot be shared effectively. A lot of the video on demand that's just not sufficiently popular. But anything live is a great candidate, and anything that's a large file that it's basically going to download the whole thing and wait till the end. It turns out those can be shared as well. I will have to do separately sort of what the transport protocols are that can accomplish these things. There's other use cases too, but I think these are the big ones that really drive my interest in this and the interest of the ISPs that I've spoken with, especially getting rid of those big traffic days. The other effects we're trying to solve here is really the climate impact. Internet turns out to take a lot of power, and the power that it takes. This is a link to to a BBC article summarizing a research project they ran that concluded that the internet consumes 3.7% of global carbon footprint from the power that it eats, and a lot of it comes from watching video. some of it comes from the download of video games. There are some other contributors too that probably can't be addressed by multicast, but you know, we're looking to get to something on the order of 1% of the the global carbon footprint ultimately. If we can get wide adoption of this kind of technology and wide usage of this kind of technology, I think that this is a much, you know, when you compare this same article did talk about the proof of work Bitcoin stuff, you know, these usages change, but at the time it was something like I think it had 22 million tons. And so we think that like out of this video, something like 20% day to day and 50% on the big days um, is probably addressable in some form if we can get wider use of multicast. You know, that's the sort of long view, but that's where we're headed and why one of the big reasons this is important. The other is the costs to end users. You know, this is going to turn into lower prices through the network because it reduces the infrastructure required to get the same level of service. Particularly for those, I mean, really only for those shared events, things that a lot of people are doing at the same time. But that does drive a lot of uh, the higher end of traffic.
Okay, do you want to take questions as we go, or should we
Oh
wait
yeah,
till the
yeah.
end?
So I can't see the queue, so please do interrupt me if there's somebody that has a question. I'd love to take questions as we go. Yeah,
All right, I'll come to Eric then.
great. Thanks, Eric. I don't hear you. I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I was talking away. Jake, question here on the climate change. We had a separate breakout session on sustainability, and there seemed to be some interest. Uh, and I believe you were on that call, right? And
I think so, yeah.
yeah, and I think there's some kind of a movement or interest to include sustainability alongside with security and privacy as horizontal review. Um, I think it's really good that you're including this. Two comments here. One, 1% from watching videos, right? And then the video game. I think, uh, if you want to just make, I think we should try and make that consistent. If you're going to use percentage of the total carbon footprint for watching videos, perhaps we can try to give an estimate in terms of the same measure for video games as well.
I think that makes sense. Sure. It would be really helpful. Maybe we should add this as an action item to sort
Yeah,
of
yeah, just a
document
comment here.
together. Yeah,
And
thank
then
you.
the second comment I have is, if it would be good to educate the stakeholders in terms of how much impact multicast would have, right? Because you outlined the problem here on global warming, climate impact, and then by being able to articulating how much multicast, what kind of impact multicast potentially can have on alleviating that would
Yeah.
really help.
So this is actually where we started because the first question before we came to W3c and you know we did some work in IETF first, and then we went to ISPs, and we're like, if we were serving traffic this way, would you actually use it? By the way, here's a busy day for your network. This is one of the many ISPs that we talked to. We picked a day and kind of analyzed the traffic and said, on this day, here is the traffic that you actually saw as the top end of this. And here is the traffic that you could have had if you'd been able to offload this with multicast. And you know, is this interesting to you? And you know, some of them there we had. So I've talked to something north of 30 different ISPs, and there's been a range of responses to like, would they be interested in this technology? Some of them, you know, on the low end, there were two that said we don't plan to do any multicast, so we took them at their word and kind of put them on the bottom of the list. One of them for reasons like we think it would reduce our revenue. So, you know, we charge by the amount of traffic that we serve. So, okay, I guess we're not going to move those guys, but almost all the ISPs were more positive in the frame of more like if we could use a significant amount of traffic, that would be great. You know, some of them had kind of logistical difficulties on what it would take for them to roll out the capability. And that sort of determined, you know, how positive we think they are. We ran lab trials with 5 of them, of which 4 said, yes, this is practical. We should, you know, if you can get traffic in running here, and if other people are doing this, then we would also invest here. Several of them, most of them, didn't, you know, put time into running lab trials with our technology, but we're positive in the sense of like, hey, if you can get traffic working, that sounds great. We've seen people try multicast before. There were different ranges of skepticism, you know, and so some of them were more like, and the proof of concept traffic that we had running was helpful in this regard, but was not sufficiently convincing to some of them to say that, well, we definitely invest. You know, it's not like I have timelines for any of them exactly, but we do have a sort of, hey, if people are doing this, we'd love to be doing this too. If you can help us offload some of our peak day traffic, that's a big problem for us. They were not so interested in the day-to-day offload, but I do think that's where a lot of the power savings comes from. But they were interested in like reducing their call load from complaints on the peak days when it starts hammering their network. And it was also important to them that this is not a you know, a Akamai black box solution, but rather a repeatable thing that anybody can use. So that's why we were going through the kind of standards process to address this kind of stuff. This is a similar analysis for a video day. There was a sporting event going on during this time, and this is kind of what the traffic actually looked like, but this is what it could have looked like had we been able to run the traffic with multicast for that sporting event. It's quite common that, you know, there's a huge chunk of traffic at a really important peak time that is taken up by multicast, and in some cases this kind of thing is getting worse. There were there's various examples of this kind of thing. So one of the pieces of work we've done so far in the group, Chris helped with this. It was kind of fun. It was writing up the getting started primer. It's there in our GitHub page. I'd encourage people who are interested to kind of give it a try and you know, get some traffic with the API we're running. And I'd be happy to get together with people and try to get them up if they're interested in sort of getting started experimenting and contributing to this. Where we are now is especially kind of on the IETF side, is we're trying to get some engagement on our security model. That's some of the feedback we got from the web, particularly from the Chromium net devs when we tried to send our experimental API as a pull request to Chromium, and they rejected it. And the reason they rejected it was that this would be a new kind of mixed content, and the security model needs to be in better shape and have better consensus before they can consider introducing this kind of a thing. Even behind a command line flag, that was not considered viable on their side. So with that feedback, Kyle here is on the call, also wrote this security document. We posted it, and we're in the process now. I think there was a couple emails last night to the community group list about where that stands. I'm hoping to get a slot in SecDispatch to talk about this at this upcoming ITF in a couple weeks. And then hopefully we'll have a venue to take this into a standards into a standard that we can build from to establish the consensus that we need about what it takes to run multicast safely for web traffic. That's kind of a precondition for really getting into the browsers properly. But there's a few other open questions that are not yet implemented, including I do have like a really prototypey implementation of Ambi that was, you know, a side standalone thing, but we'll need to do something that's integrated with the browser to do authentication of the packets before processing them. And we'll need to do some kind of a quick integration probably for the web transport work. And then that'll need to be turned into a spec that's proposed. But that's kind of the next steps that we're looking at. There's some the way back pressure is going to work in that kind of a setup is a little bit different because the sender doesn't slow down. What you need to do is like stop listening to a channel and make that decision in a place where the JavaScript is not making the decision, but rather something underneath the browser is doing it. And that needs to be spec'd out, which we have an adopted spec in the MBOND group about how we propose to do that. There are other options here for communicating the information involved. It might be that when we're doing it in a web transport context, we can extend this to send the same kind of information over a quick frame. But the bones are here of what we propose to do, but there's a lot of fleshing it out to still be done on the technical side. And then there's, the signaling for the APIs that we want to integrate to in the browser are really up in the air at this point. The quick HTTP MCAS draft here from BBC is a really good step in this direction. I think it's the right place to start experimenting. But there's support for datagrams, and this is kind of in the current web transport or the current multicast community group charter is to go into web transport first with the intent of getting datagram support so that we can plug in existing multicast based applications that are running in a walled garden context and do that sort of in general for browser-based implementations. And the way you can do this, if you have web transport, is to just stick something in front of the traffic at the sender side that encapsulates it into an appropriate quick datagram framing and sends it over a multicast channel and then successfully unpacks it as a datagram at the receiver side. And this will give you what we've got running today in our API. I should have put a link to the demo video that I put up. I sent it out to the list, but I think I should send it out to the current participants. We have, one of the things we did as part of our experiment is ported our existing multicast receiver into WebAssembly and used it to play video that
Hey,
was
Jake.
yeah.
Hey, Jake. Sorry, I tried to wave my hand and raise my hand. Quick question before you go any further.
Yeah.
All this work over in IETF, how active are the browser vendors involved in that discussion?
Not very. This has
They're
been
not.
mostly, yeah. This is, I mean, the thread on that multicast security. The respondent so far has been Eric Rescorla. He's with Mozilla, so I think we're starting to see some level of review from there. His initial reaction, as usual, was like, "Go away," but I've responded in a way that I think is. I'm hoping that I'll see some support from other parties to make the case that this is worth looking at.
What What about, for example, companies like Amazon? Are they also involved in the discussion there?
So they're not involved in the discussion there. I haven't seen them yet at IETF. I did get a call from Amazon. So public knowledge is that they signed a deal with the NFL to deliver Thursday Night Football to Amazon Prime subscribers, and that's over the next 10 years. We've had some conversations exploring whether it's going to be viable to do this with multicast. As you know, we don't have a production implementation of this yet, and so they are trying to find a good way to do that delivery because Thursday Night Football, you know, has a lot of viewers for what can be supported. This would be a high end of what the internet can support, even if you're not running it at very high quality. So this greatly exceeds. They said that that I was free to disclose that we'd been talking, and that they are supportive of the standards work that we're doing. It's not clear yet whether they'll be able to make use of it in the time frame that they need for the Thursday Night Football delivery, at least at the beginning. And I think they're scrambling to see what they, you know, I don't know where they stand exactly, but I've not seen them engage in the standards bodies yet. But I'm hopeful that they will step in because they have a driving interest in doing so at this stage, I think, where this would actually be a really good use case to help with this. Likewise, I've had just some private conversations with various people at Google. Not everyone at Google is convinced, but some of the people who looked at the YouTube live traffic and sort of thought about how it would work if something got too popular, said that they are supportive of work in this direction. Although I you know, they haven't really engaged yet, to the best of my knowledge. So I'm hoping that we can drive their interest, but I have not yet successfully done that, I would say. I don't know if that answers everything. There's probably some other questions to ask there. I think a lot of people start out pretty skeptical on multicast, especially people in the networking space who were involved in the last attempt. You know, there was, I don't know if you know any history about it, but it's been around since I think before 2000 when it was originally proposed. And there's a vast amount of work that went into trying to make any source multicast work that really didn't pan out, and they had to change to source specific multicast. Recently published was, I think it was maybe RFC 8815, that deprecated any source multicast for interdomain usage, where you're talking between different networks. It's, you know, it's kind of a deep dive to really go down that rabbit hole, but any source multicast was a big false start for multicast, and gave it kind of a bad taste for a lot of people who used it. But on the other side, it means that in the operating systems, it is already widely deployed. There's like IGMP, you know, on any end user device that you try to use is already there and already runs and already works. And people do use it for local network discovery. There are many ISPs that are using it to deliver TV services today, and they have sort of got it running through their whole chain for the one, especially for the ones that wanted to make it work for end user devices, like their mobile devices that are connected to Wi-Fi. They've got it running all the way through the delivery path.
Yeah, I think that and you know, we had this in our discussion before, Jake. I think the first task for the community group is to articulate pain points and business proposition to the key stakeholder. I think you know, you have some potential stakeholders that that are natural. The effort needs to be engaging them to convince them, right? Google, for example, Google is not a single company, right? It is a single company, but it has multiple groups all doing their own thing, right?
Mhm.
So a natural supporter you can enroll for this would be the YouTube people, right? And then Amazon as well, right? And the goal is to really try to find ways to get them to feel the pain points and get them on your side. And then obviously the other major issue here is how do you get the Chrome browser folks comfortable with a security issue, right?
Yeah. So there is a bit of a chicken and egg problem, because you do also need ISPs to be interested in delivering it. That's why we started there. And to some extent, like what I would like to get to happen is to have the technical capability that's actually executable. And this raises the interest level in the past. It's, when you just give the slideware demonstrations, then a lot of people uh, who might otherwise be interested just, you know, if they can't try it out, then why would they bother?
Yeah. Can
Um,
you get an ISP involved here?
uh,
The ISPs that you've been working
mhm.
with?
So there's a few who have joined the group and not really dug in. We have a member or two from Comcast, I believe, here. I don't remember whether Chris from Verizon has joined the group, but he has attended a few meetings and has been interested. Um, I would love to get more, uh, but from the ISP side, they're going to be less interested in the browser work. They just want it to be there. So I don't want to be blocked on them like participating in making the browser go, which is really the charter for this group. Um, I guess I'd love to see. I'd love to have a big picture plan for how this all comes together that really works well. The charter of the multicast group is really about bringing the browser to a decent place, but it's also I think this plays into the overall story of what needs to happen. Some of it is going to be outside standards bodies and convincing people that their interests lie in this direction, and that this is worth investing in.
No, I think you made a good point, right? If the business need is there, the instruction will be given to the standard guys to go walk it and get it standardized, right?
If they think it's credible, yes.
Yeah,
Um,
because you can do all the standard work you want, but if the business guys are not going to implement it, you got nothing, right?
right,
Just a lot of busy, unproductive work, and
right.
that's my big concern here. I mean the benefits is quite obvious, right? But
Mhm.
we as a group, how do we rally the ecosystem around it? That has to be the immediate challenge for us to tackle.
Yeah, this is why I was engaging with demos, and this is really what the next steps I've proposed here are trying to focus on is getting demos closer to being what would actually be releasable in some form, something closer to credible. The standards work is going to be a part of that, and I think an important part of that that's going to come before it gets put into any actual browsers. But having a browser fork that does something useful is, to me, one of the key next steps to make the case that we can do something real here that people will believe. Um, and the other piece of that is getting the buy-in from the browser tech side that okay, this is not a I mean, most of the objections come on the security side, is what I've seen. So this is where we think that the next stage focus has to be probably, but it also has to be like just a sufficiently credible proposal for people to pay attention. And that's why my proposal for next steps is to get the demo closer to that really credible proposal. Right now, what we have is like, yes, it can play video, but not in a way that could be accepted into a browser. If we have like, yes, it could play video, and yes, we have some growing level of consensus within the standards that this would not be a violation of the security needs of the browser end users, then I'm hoping we'll have more people paying attention. But you're absolutely right. It's kind of a hope. And I don't think we have the level of buy-in that we need from people who stand to gain even by this. Like, our analysis shows there's a lot of money to be saved here on our side as a sender, and it's really a similar story for a lot of the ISPs that are doing the delivery, and it's really a similar story for a lot of the content owners that might have the capability to do this. Um, there's racks and racks full of servers that they might not have to run if they get into this work, and like the ongoing costs of those can be quite high. So it could reduce their spend either with CDNs or with this is one of the carrots that we offered to the customers that we've talked to do some of the do some of the looking, is like discounts on the traffic that can be delivered with multicast. This gets them interested enough in many cases to say, yeah, if you had that, we'd do it. But there's like a, if you had that, chicken and egg problem.
So, I agree, it's an interesting problem to coordinate so many challenges. I guess part of the conversation that might be needed with stakeholders will be bound to a sense of a timeline. And you brought up the case of Amazon earlier, which is quite interesting. So what's your best guess as to how much time would be needed to align the stars?
Yeah.
So like you mentioned already this demo, what's the timeline you estimate before getting this frog browser operational? And then how long you think would be needed to then go door to door and convince people with that demo?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say you probably shouldn't trust my estimate, because from my point of view, I have a demo running. There's, I've put it into a browser. I played video using it. That's posted today on the under the Web Networks TPAC thing. There's a Chromium fork binary you can download and install and run and receive UDP packets unauthenticated, but you can then process the UDP packets in whatever way you want. I'd be happy to share a link so you can see the demo running if anybody's interested in seeing that. Though I don't have to have permission to publish it in an archived forum, and we move it around from time to time. But I'm happy to share it and let people see it. But there's this open question of, well, is it actually going to be able to be shipped in a browser? And if it's there, then will ISPs actually use it? Will content owners actually ship content that makes use of it? And I think the business drivers are there. So to me, the answer is clear. But what's the timeline? I thought we'd be there today.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that in your plan, again, the security obstacle is a key one to lift, to build, to give confidence that we can build momentum across all the stakeholders. Once you have something that you could convince a browser to ship, then you can use it to convince at least one ISP to use it and a big content provider to use it. And once you have that, you start a virtuous cycle of adoption. Is that basically the plan?
Basically, yeah. There's a few other rays of hope here. There's Giant and Internet2 both are. Uh, I've been talking to them. They have multicast working groups, and they are sort of collective of NRENs, and they have a research mandate or charter to support some research initiatives, and they do think multicast is worthwhile. They have some multicast capabilities running in their backbones now, and I'm working with them on both of their kind of timelines. Are the ingest proposal that we have for how the multicast traffic gets into the network for the subscribers that have joined, which is an important piece of making the delivery credible. This is a big part of what our lab tests with ISPs we're looking at. But there's there's a number of moving parts, some of which are outside the charter of W3c, but that are essential to eventual adoption. And so that this is part of the complexity of the problem. So in this group, what I had really been hoping to do is move forward the receive side of this story. But there's I would encourage interested people to engage on the IETF side as well, which is a big part of moving the rest of the story, and the ISP side of this as well, and getting the whole picture to the stakeholders. Like, it is complicated with a lot of moving pieces, but there's a lot of money at stake too, and a big impact in what it can achieve. So it seems worthwhile to try to make it happen, to me at least.
Yeah, Jake. I have a kind of a question. Like, I think the customers really want this solution if it's really transparent for them. So as transparent as possible. So from what I see from the DVB side, so essentially they kind of enable the receiver through the MPEG dash, so like an MPEG dash player. And yeah, I haven't seen the complex security model they made. They basically they have a easier problem, I would say, because they have just a broadcasting, right? So and here we want to resolve this multicast. That means we had to manage the source and also manage the encryption on each multicast stream. And so I have one question. Like, yes, we consider the current the receiver side, but is that possible on the server side? Like, since currently we have this kind of so-called edge server, even the 5G edge, which is much closer to the last mile issue, right? So since our target is to resolve this bandwidth issue in the last mile. So is that possible? We have something like some mechanism in the edge server, right? So that we can simplify this kind of security model or security issue.
Yeah, so I have to say it comes back to this kind of a situation. Like, I think if you really are making use of the broadcast capability at the edge, then it might be possible uh, to do something. But the issue here is that you're trusting those edge servers. This has a history in the IETF of having some trouble when you hand off control on in a way that they can change. There's been cases of like ad stealing is what they call it, where this is part of the reason that end-to-end encryption has become so important, right? If you send something that an ISP on the path can change, then there's been cases where they'll change the content on the way, and so it's not what the sender sent; it's what got passed through that the end user gets. And this is a big source of I mean, that is actually the way it works today in like the broadcast TV world, because you can't get the scale on internet. But when you talk to the web people and when you talk to the IETF people, then there is a barrier, a security barrier, to sort of handing off control and requiring this chain of trust that explicitly includes your last hop ISP between the source of the content and the customer. And this is part of what we've addressed with the AMBI authentication. There's not a way for that to be spoofed anymore. They still do have to pass it through and to choose to allow it or not allow it. But this creates an end-to-end authentication chain that the intermediate ISP can no longer change. And so there's no scope anymore for for ad theft, for example, or for unauthenticated injection. But that's only one of the several problems. Like I do think the idea that, well, the broadcast will happen in the walled garden at the ISP layer, and what you do is you hand it off to them, and they have ways to distribute it to their end users. This has a different set of problems to solve. It's not impossible. That might be a way that you get the similar kind of broadcast scale in the end. But where it gets more complex is, well, it only works for video. You're not going to get VR this way. That'll be a whole new set of problems that have to come in. Gameplay kinds of things. There's other use cases. Also the downloads, like that is it might be that you can standardize like what does a download look like, and you can do the same kind of story where you hand off the entire thing to an ISP or the access basically provider who then distributes it with the broadcast technology. 4G had this capability and nobody ever used it. It was the northbound interface was hard. I mean, you can say the same about multicast, right? But multicast IPTV has been used. It just hasn't been used interdomain yet because it doesn't have that all the same pieces. But there's this. Sorry.
Yeah. I know. So, but what I see is there's an incentive for ISP to make some change, right? So since it's going to save the bandwidth and then the problem is it's quite easy for them to make this traffic kind of, because we are talking about like a fallback to the unicast, and it's easy to make the change from the ISP position.
So
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
I think the way we've proposed is the easier way for the ISP. They don't have content to manage that they have to be the source of maintaining it. All they have to do is pass through streams and make decisions about yes or no, are we going to pass through the multicast streams? So it's this is one of the big design questions, like which way should that be done? Should it be like only the end ISP is the one that can do the broadcast and you have to give it to them as a coherent object that they can unpack and distribute? Or is there a way to do this such that when they import traffic as a stream with opaque packets, they can just stream those packets through using the existing multicast work? And people have different opinions on this point. My opinion is really that this is the way to go, but that is still a question of debate, I think.
Okay.
I think most of the ISPs we've talked to tend to prefer this model, and one of the reasons is because it means they don't have as much to maintain. Like they can focus on getting the packets through and maintaining network health instead of having to deal with the end user applications that are broken or not broken, that work with some content, not other content, that if you make the capability of, oh, it's just IP and they can pass it on through, and it's the end applications and the senders that decide, well, how is that content interpreted, then you're in a little bit better shape. It's closer to being what HTTP can do, although there are some important differences.
Mm.
But it's a great question. It's and a very interesting. How are we on time? I guess we are. We mostly didn't talk about these, but I will throw this in as what I would like to do in the next month is to start some experiments using Quick and working towards the web transport integration. Something that can integrate with an existing web transport API. And if anybody would like to join me on that, please reach out, contact me. I would like to collaborate with some people if possible. I'll probably be spending a few weeks on this over the next month, probably after the IETF completes. But to see where I can get with some of these existing Quick libraries that have done some of these. This is the draft HTTP over Quick from the BBC in the NGHQ, and the web transport Quick implementation uses this AIO Quick, and I'm not sure which one's going to be easier, but that'll be part of the investigation. And that's just a very small next step, but it's an important one, I think. The AMBI implementation is another important thing to get moving. Anybody who can comment on the SecDispatch thread, I think if you've participated in IETF before, this seems potentially an important moment for just demonstrating that there is some value in this if you believe it. And there's also a thread here about a hackathon opportunity that we've been discussing where we'd make a different kind of demo with the existing browser implementation. Anybody who's interested in that, also please reach out, and that would be, I believe, next week during the hackathon week preceding IETF. I'm not sure if this is coming together exactly, but it really kind of depends on the interest. But anyone who wants to participate, I'll hook you up with the right people to talk about it. Right. So, do we have any action items to walk away with here? I think we had. Any final questions? Or I hope I've given you a taste of the complexity of this problem and the value in addressing it. I think there was an action item. You wanted, it's in the notes. Thank you, Chris. I'll go back and get that. All right. Well, if we have no other comments or questions, then I will thank you all for being here and coming. I hope I've piqued your interest and that you think this might be worth looking into, and we can wrap it up. Anyone who wants to be in the community group, we meet monthly. So this one we moved, usually it's the first Wednesday of the month. We moved it to TPAC week instead, so that's instead of next Wednesday, but the first Wednesday in December, that's usually at 7:30 Pacific time, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. So half an hour before the start of this. But if you want to contact me offline before then, please do feel free. And I will end the recording. And thank you.